Welcome back to the Journey to Leadership podcast. Leadership and management insights to engage, educate, and empower. The aim of this podcast is to provide leaders at all levels of organizations with the tactics and techniques to dramatically increase effectiveness, productivity, and results in their business. I am Corey Atkinson, your leadership and performance coach, head of learning and development at CSPN. Thank you for joining us. Now, since these podcasts are for all of you, my listeners, I'd love to get your thoughts. If you'd like to get insight on a specific topic or situation, ask a question, or give us feedback on what you like or want to hear more of, please let me know. Email me directly at Corey, C-O-R-E-Y, at mycspn.com. Love to hear from you, and we'll respond right away. So let's get started. Today, we're talking about a deficit, a listening deficit. Javon was an up-and-coming senior leader in a technology corporation and was having his annual review with his CEO. It was going well until he was blindsided. He was baffled to discover that the feedback from his peers, customers, and direct reports had placed special emphasis on one potentially devastating problem. It was his listening deficit. They had all remarked on how over the couple of years, and most recently the past year, his listening was not where it needed to be. Now, Javon was widely considered, a sharp person on the team, definitely moving up, and would not be able to move up if this issue was not dealt with. It needed immediate action and attention if he wanted to move further in the organization. As Javon recounted the story to me, I could see that he was not happy about this. It had shaken him to the core. I let him finish. I waited for a moment, and then I said, Javon, what examples did he give you that showed you that your listening is really not where it needs to be? Javon sighed, pulled out a notebook from his briefcase, flipped a few pages, and then said, Well, Corey, he gave me 3 things that I need to work on. He read them slowly, shaking his head in disbelief at each one. The first one, constantly jumping in. Number 2, being distracted. And 3, controlling outcomes. I took out a piece of paper, jotted them down. I said, tell me about them. Tell me what you heard and where you're at. Javon sat back and said, well, constantly jumping in. Rick said he loves my ideas, but the feedback is that the organization wish I would put more thought into when I share them. But that's my job. I'm coming up with ideas. I smiled and nodded, but I said, Javon, as a leader, you're rewarded for speaking up and providing answers. That's what got you where you are. After all, you're more experienced than your direct reports, and you're routinely asked for your opinion in other situations. However, as we move up the leadership ladder in organizations, the habit of constantly answering inadvertently diminishes people around you. It actually brings them down. And this could actually severely affect your level of influence as you move up higher in the organization. He shook his head in agreement and understood where I was coming from. What about the next one, Javon? Being distracted. Well, Corey, I can see where they're coming from. I've got a lack of time and I've got a surplus of tasks. I've got to multitask. But Rick just didn't like what he was hearing. I shook my head agreement with Javon. I can hear you. Checking email while talking to others, not paying attention might seem like we're trying to keep busy, but it can actually cause bigger problems. And as a leader, one of the things I've noticed with CEOs and senior leadership people is that in addition to the distractions of technology, is the voice inside our head is relentless. It does not stop talking and can be a significant barrier to paying attention to the small things that happen in organizational meetings. And sometimes our internal volume is louder than the person we're conversing with, which makes listening impossible. Javon made some notes in his paper. And what about the last one, Javon? Controlling outcomes. Corey, I don't get this at all, Javon said, shaking his head. Even well-intentioned leaders need to be able to control things. That's how we get things done. Javon, I hear you, I said. But then I paused. And I said, but Javon, do you notice that when things don't go your way, you get a little anxious? He shook his head. Yeah, I do. Well, you see, what's happening is that if a conversation is not going in the direction that the leader wants it to go, they get nervous. They get panicky. This is not where I want to go. This is not how I played it out before the meeting. And this anxiety leads to either inadvertently or intentional bursts of interruption as a way to redirect the conversation. Now, there are times to do this, but if we do it too often, people notice. And we're fearful of not letting conversations organically roll out the way they need to. Javon sighed and said, Corey, you're right. I do fear when meetings don't go the way I want them to go. I said, but don't worry. We're okay. Javon made a few more notes, looked at me and said, Corey, I need some help because I got to turn this around quickly. I said, Javon, you're not alone in this regard. My knowledge of corporate leaders, regardless of feedbacks, has indicated that somewhere around 2 to 3 out of 4 or 5 all have a listening deficit at some point in their career. But the problem is that if they're not mindful or aware of these listening deficits, it can have real effects on organizations, a real ripple effect. It can paralyze cross-unit collaboration, sink careers, and if the CEO has a deficit, it can actually derail the company. But this doesn't have to be the case. Despite how fast we're moving in today's world, time-starved leaders like yourselves can master the art of what I call the essence of listening. Now, conventional advice for better listening is always going to be about connecting, but there are 3 or 4 things that I'd recommend that you do. And here they are. 1, pan for the nuggets, consider source, prime, and slow down. Javon started to jot these down and I explained each one in turn. When I talk about pan for the nuggets, I learned this from a senior director I worked with a while back at a multinational finance organization. And what he would do in his meetings, and for each speaker, especially in the early days of taking on this role to sort of right the wrongs in the organization, is that he would divide a sheet of paper about 3/4 across. On the larger left side, he'd scribble detailed notes, and on the smaller right side, he'd occasionally jot down 2 or 3 words capturing what he perceived to be the key essence or insights that was being brought to his attention. He was jotting down the nuggets. Now, it's a simple technique, but it made a huge difference. Whether or not you do use this one, Javon, we all need to train ourselves to sift for the nuggets in a conversation, which requires work and effort. And then let the other person that we're talking with understand that we're on the same page. Javon made some notes. He said, pan for the nuggets. I've got to do that more. The next one, Javon, consider the source. Now, this is especially within your organization, working internally with other departments. Always consider where that person's coming from. Where's the frame of reference? And actually say that to yourself in the conversation, or if not, communicate it. And this is extremely important when disagreements arise or mission or visions need to be changed. When you truly understand the perspective of others, you are most likely able to reach a productive solution, mend fences, and be able to keep moving forward. As well, the other party feels like they've heard, and thus trust is built. So consider the source, frame of reference. The last one, slow down. Now, there's a reason that over the years, we've all lost our ability to maybe listen as effectively as we can, or in certain situations, our experience tells us that we think we already know the answers. And on top of that, it probably feels passive. Javon shook his head in agreement. Like it's the opposite of action. It's the opposite of what got you to where you wanted to go. It's much faster to move to a decision based on the information you already have. But in doing so, Javon, we missed important considerations and sacrificed the opportunity to build a connection of understanding. Now, keep in mind, if you start to work on slowing down and begin to change your listening style to a more empathetic or truly listening one, you're going to find that it feels inefficient. It doesn't feel like it's working. But if you slow down and take the time to truly hear someone and replay the essence of their thoughts back, you'll see how powerful it is. The payback will be dramatic. Javon asked me a few more questions about each one: pan, consider the source, and slow down. Made a few notes. And I'm happy to say that when we got together 2 weeks later for a sort of a touch-base conversation, he noticed that people were already commenting on how he was listening differently. So, what's our lesson here? What's Coach Corey's comments on a listening deficit? For leaders out there, listening is a central competence for success. It is something that I drive home in every session that I do, regardless of where they're at. Because at its core, listening is about bringing us together. And for organizations to succeed, people must come together around a common goal. Our ability to understand the true spirit of a message as it is intended to be communicated and then demonstrate your understanding is paramount in forming connections and leading with integrity, courage, and effectively. The stats are out there, the numbers are there. Millions of dollars are lost every day in organizations simply because of poor listening. In your company, it might be only thousands, hundreds, maybe even just 20 or 50 here and there. But whatever the amount, I'm guessing we'd all be amazed at how much money is lost due to poor listening skills and how it's impacting and making our deficit either bigger or smaller. So, what's our recap? What can you do and take away from this conversation? 3 things. Pan for the nuggets. Your action here, everyone. The benefits of going deeper and finding out exactly what those key issues are will go beyond ensuring that you've heard it right the first time. On top of that, the person on the other end of the conversation will be gratified that you're truly grasping the essence of their thoughts. Connections will be made, and of course, ideas will start to flow. On top of this, there'll be a real gratification and motivation around it because both you and that person will be energized to create even more thoughts and more solutions. So what happens when we pan for the nuggets is that it opens the door to truly understanding where the other person's at and, of course, building strong relationships. Second one, consider the source. What we're really talking about here is classic active listening. Don't just hear what is being said, but also how it's said and where it's coming from. On top of that, probe, and probe, but do it with humility, not aggression, because that will truly energize a group. The classic phrase of "I'm curious to know" will never steer you wrong, because it'll encourage the group or the person you're talking to reach a consensus and help them arrive at new and better solutions. And lastly, everyone, slow down. Now, for this one, the action that I gave Javon and I'll share with you is explicitly lay out an exercise regime by which you will practice truly listening every day to strengthen your skills. I actually tell people to make a habit of asking yourself after an interaction whether you understood the essence of what was said to you, the person's point of view, their context, and even their emotion, their mindset. And then even go one step further, ask yourself whether that person knows that they were heard and understood. When you put these 3 together, pan, consider, and slow down, great things will happen. Because truly empathetic listening requires courage. It takes effort. And the willingness to let go of old habits and embrace new ones may at first feel time-consuming and inefficient, but get the results at the end of the day. Because once they're acquired, these listening habits are the very skills that turn organizations from good to great. So that's the end of our podcast. Hope you've enjoyed these insights that we've shared with you this session. Please connect with me once again through our website, mycspn.com. You will find even more information about our customizable learning and development options, consulting, upcoming events, and client success stories. As well, you can reach out to me on LinkedIn or email me directly at corey@mycspn.com. I love getting your thoughts, comments, and questions. As well, all of our podcasts are on our archives page, so please go there to see what we've been talking about. And because community is key to our journey to leadership and life, I've got a great offer for everyone out there. When you post a positive review of the podcast, I will send you my CSPN Gotta See This reading list. It's a collection of articles, blogs, infographics, and more that my clients and I have found extremely helpful for maximizing leadership, implementing management strategies, and delivering memorable experiences for clients and customers. So please post your review and I'll send the list immediately. My name again is Corey Atkinson, the leadership and performance coach at CSPN. Hope you really enjoy listening and look forward to seeing you on your journey to leadership. Thanks for listening. Have a fabulous week.